What's up, y'all? Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to go over how to make a sad, kind of nostalgic sounding beat. We're going to break it up into 4 sections. So first we'll go over making the melody and the bass line. Then we'll go over the drums. Then we'll go over the effects, kind of the extra stuff you can add in there to really make the track sound full. And then I will break down all of the mixing that I did as well, some tips and tricks there. So without further ado, let's dive in. So to start, we'll give you a quick sample of what the beat sounds like, kind of a last bar of the verse, and then going into the hook here. Alright, so let's break down the melody side of things. To start, I basically used Omnisphere synth sounds. You don't need to have Omnisphere to get good sounds like this. I just started using it years ago and I really like it. And it's looks like a lot of notes here, but it's actually super simple. This is just 2 chords. If you know anything about music theory, it's C minor 7 and then an F7 chord. So these notes, we just have C minor, which is C, D sharp or E flat, G, and then the 7th is B flat or A sharp right here. So we start with those notes, and then sometimes you can add or remove notes from that chord to make it sound more full, kind of make it sound a certain way, give it a slightly different character. So in this case, I just kept the C on the bass, and then I had the 3rd of this E flat D sharp note right up here. E flat and D sharp are the same. So we get this. And then we go to the F7 like this. F7 is just an F major chord. So F, A flat or G sharp, and then C. And then we add the 7th note, which is E flat or D sharp. Same thing here. You can just have the blocked chord going like this, the basic notes, but you can also maneuver them around to give it a different flavor. Or in this case, I added an extra note. It was the 9, the 9th note of the scale. So that's just one note, one full step above your root. So we know the root of the chord is F. It says that on the note right here. And if we just go 2 steps up from that, we get to this G right here. So that's the 9. It can really give it a nice flavor. So this is what that sounds like. Just like that. Now, I wanted some variation of the same chords for the second time around in the progression. So I just mostly kept this C the same, but I removed the 7. Actually, no, I moved it down here. Can move that down an octave like that. And what I'm doing is I'm just holding Command or Control, and then the down arrow key can pop that up and down. Just like that. So I just moved that one note down to make the chord sound a little bit different. And then this top note, in general, is the note that shines through on most chords. So I just moved that down to the 9 as well. So same thing here. You have your root, which is this C. We know we're looking at a C chord. And if you move this note up 2 spots, that's your 9. So that can give it a nice, slightly different flavor there. So here's what that one sounds like. See how it's a little bit different than the first one? Here's the first one. And then here's the other one. It's technically the same chord, it just has a slightly different sound to it. And then same idea with this F. I just wanted to have the same chord, but move it around a little bit differently. So a lot of these notes are the same. You have the G that carries over, the D sharp or E flat, the C. But again, this one down here, I just moved this note up an octave. Again, G sharp down here. We get another G sharp an octave up. So you can move it up manually, or you can just hold down Command or Control and the up arrow key or down arrow key. Pop that up and down like that. So I just moved that note around, and I did the same thing with this too. Actually, what I probably did was take both of them. Oops. Move them both up like that. So that's just one way you can make chords sound a little bit different, so it's not just the same thing going on repeat over and over again. Kept the roots the same down here. Now for effects, the way I made this sound like this, I literally just opened up Fruity Love Filter, went through presets, and I might have just stuck with the basic default setting. It looks like I did. But you can kind of play around with the presets in here and then get something and find one that you like to give it a certain vibe to it. So that's the melody that's kind of going through the verse. It's just that. Now for this more melody, I coupled this over the hook just so there's a little bit more going on. Play the pattern like this. And that just repeats over and over again. Just simple little dun 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 dun. A couple little notes there. To make this, I just use the C minor scale. So you can just play around with the notes and the rhythms and just kind of feel it out and do what you like. So I found this top line right here. Thought that sounded pretty good. And then I moved everything down an octave. So we should include this too. But moved everything down an octave, so it's, see, D sharp right here, D sharp right here, D, D. So it's the same notes, just octaves apart. Kind of makes it sound a little bit more powerful. Now, if you're ever confused about what scale to use, I'll give you a little trick. It would help if I learned how to type. So minor scale, I'll just outline it like this. You have your root right here. So you can follow these steps. You have your root, whatever key you're in. 2 steps up and then 1 step up. So this is a C minor scale right here. It looks just like this. It's C, D, D sharp, F, G, G sharp, A sharps. You can move this up and down. As long as that first note starts on a C, you're in good shape. If you want to transpose this to a different key, just take this exact same shape and move it down to, say, A. Then you have an A minor like this. We'll keep this at C for now. And then you can just use these notes. So what I did here for this song and the melody started with, move that down to the right key. So I started with this. See, D sharp, okay. We'll start higher up right here. So already kind of get a nice sounding chord just using these bass notes that are right in here. What did I do? Just like that. So we'll get rid of that scale. Rhythm is a little bit off, but you get the idea. Just kind of sketching it in for now. But that's a nice little trick. Just find out what are the notes in the key that you're in, and then just mix those notes up around. Find a good rhythm that sounds good. Play around with it, and then eventually you'll settle on something that you like. Now, let's go back here. For the melody, take a look at the effects I used. Again, yeah, I just used love filter. Just play around with the presets in here. Find something that sounds good to you. This is just a basic plugin that comes with FL Studio, but there's all kinds of cool filters and effects that you can find free and paid for just to make your melodies and chords sound even cooler. But again, this is just a free one that comes with FL Studio. This one I also use some delay. Basic settings. I kind of set the cutoff and res right here. Turn the level down. Typically I go ping pong. Set this timer right here. Tempo sync. Didn't touch any of these settings down on the bottom rack. Just kept it up here. I think I turned the level down a little bit too. Then convolver, just a good way to add reverb. Equalizer, EQ. Again, we'll get more into all this, the other plugins I used in the mixing side. But it's really important to take out the low ends. Even on the reverb, I like to do this. Just remove the low frequencies, even remove some of the higher frequencies in this case too. So effects, yeah, it's got a little bit of reverb. High cut, low cut, bigger size, set the decay up a little bit. That's what this one is. And baseline. So here we got the baseline. Super simple in this case. Here's what it sounds like. So it's just the root note C. Because if you remember, our chords are C, or C minor 7, and then F7. So we just use the root, and then the next root. So I kept the C, just that same note going the whole time. And then I used the F, the root of the second chord, and kept that going. And then took the third. So it's nice with bass lines. You can pick out notes from the scale that I outlined earlier and use those in your bass line. Or you can also go and pull notes from the chord that you're using. So I was looking at the chord and see, oh, we have this G sharp right here close to the root. Well, why don't we use that in the bass line too? So we have this F right here, goes up to the G sharp, and then back down to the C. So that gives your bass a little bit more movement. This one was just an octave. So I'll play the F down here, and then the F up here. So altogether, if we just look at the melody and the bass, mix all these in, here's what we get. Now let's take a look at the drums. So we got the snare right here. A lot of times I'll start with the snare just to give it a little bit of a groove. And I just put this on the second and the fourth beat. Actually, just the second, it looks like. Yeah. In general, with a snare, you don't want it on that first beat. You want to give it a sec before it comes in. So let the beat come in first, down, and then the snare is on the up. So if it's you want that snare coming in on the up ones. So we got that rocking. Kick. Let's take a look at the kick. Take a look at the kick with the clap. Just a little bit of a groove right there. And then hi-hats. So what I like to do is just set the hi-hats every other one. As you can see how it mainly goes, like this little set right here. Oops. Do it this way. This little set right here. And then you can add little fills in here. So we have this roll. Whoops. Try that again. This little roll. And then kind of a triplet feel almost, but we had this little extra note in here to let it come out of the roll. And it's nice to put rolls right before a snare, or sometimes right after a snare, but you want to think about these things, not just put hi-hat rolls or different random notes in random places. You want to make sure that it's cohesive with the other drums and with the melody and everything else that's going on. So this one right here comes in right before the snare. Snare hits on this note. So we had these two right here. Sometimes just add a little extra one in between. Makes it bounce a little bit more. And then we had these two right up here. Sometimes you can just move the sample up a couple notes, and it just kind of gives it a slightly more of a groove. If you hear that, it goes up. I can't make it with my mouth. Hear that a little bit. And with this sample, I couldn't find a hi-hat sample that I really liked with this song that sounded good with everything. But this one was close, and I found if I pitched it down a little bit, it sounded better. Originally, it came in at C. Usually it just defaults right there. And it sounded like this just by default. But if I pitched it down, it kind of made it kind of sounded a bit more sad and nostalgic. Like it matched the vibe of the chords, the melody a little bit more when it was pitched down just a tad. So we just moved this down one little half step right here. And then that's what we got with the hi-hats. So drums all together sound like this. And now onto the effects. So the effects are all these extra little ear candies and things you can add to really make the track come to life. So I'll give you an example of that. I layered the snare with this wood sound is what the sample is called. It sounds like this. So it's nice. It kind of rings out a little bit. Comes right in on the snare. Actually, every other snare, as you can see. So these are the snares. You can see these little dots are where the snare comes in, or the clap. So it comes in on every other one, just kind of slower. Just comes in when it wants. Doesn't have to come in every single time. Only when it wants. And I made these two separate samples. So we have this bass one. Then over here you can just left click on this list. Click on Make Unique. And you can mess around with this one separately without affecting the original. So this one I panned a little bit to the right. And then this one I panned a little bit to the left. So they alternate. So these ones on the bottom are all heading in the right ear. These ones are all in the left ear. So it bounces. It kind of helps the track become a little bit wider and more stereoized, if that's a word. And it really fills the space and works as a nice little ear candy going on. And then the other thing you could do is add impacts. So I use these, got them from PML Sample Pack, Production Music Live. You can get them from Cymatics, Off Splice, your favorite producer on YouTube, Sample Pack. Usually people will have some extra little effects that you can throw in there. Or you can take a crash, like drum sounds even, and just put a crash in there too. So on the impact we have just layered 3 of them. So we have this airy one right here. We have this crash. And that kind of spacey impact. You don't want those to be too loud. You want them to be just loud enough to kind of feel them more than you can actually hear them. And leading up to it, I had this crash in reverse. So that crash in reverse kind of builds a little bit of anticipation, lets you know something's coming. With everything else, it sounds like this. It's just nice. It helps your transitions a little bit. And in the intro, too, it's really nice to have some effects. So right here in the intro, I use this sweeping. Let me see if I can find it. This sweeping sound right here. Nice and airy, just helps fill everything out. Again, ear candy is the word I like to use. Nice to have some ear candies going on throughout the track, even right from the very beginning in this case. And then we had another one coming in right over here. This one's a bit quieter because I blended the two together like that. And then more of these transitions here. So coming into the chorus or the hook, I kept these impacts from over here. And then I just moved this crash up. So instead of being spaced out like it was in here to give it that moment of silence, just went right into it, just up and back down. Sounds like this. And again, just like before, I made this one unique. Click on that. And then that way you can reverse this one right here without affecting the original sample right here. And then we had this transition where it was kind of that same effect built in. Just layered it with this. And I guarantee some guy just did the same thing, or some girl just did the same thing that I did over here. Just put two crashes together. One was reversed, going into the normal one like that. So you don't really need to have two, but I thought it was good. Layer them sometimes. And then this sweeping thing coming back here. So dynamics are important in a track. Have louder sections, then have it be a bit quieter. Because you can't have loud without also having quiet to balance it out. So it's kind of a quiet section. Have this little ear candy before it goes into the real verse again. Just like that. Lastly, we'll cover the mixing side of things. So, went over some of the effects that I used earlier. It's Fruity Love Filter and Reverb. We'll go into everything else now. One of the big important things with mixing that I typically start with is just removing the low end from everything that's not supposed to be there. So in the melodies in general, you want to take out all these lows, really under 100 or even 150, 200 hertz. The lower the frequency, the more muddy things get when there's layers there, when there's more instruments there. So take out all these low frequencies. Give it some shape too. Sometimes you can use your ear and try to mold it. Didn't really do that with this one. I thought it sounded good as is, just from Omnisphere and with the filter on there. But it's really, really important to take out the lows. So I did that on everything, on this melody as well. This one I did shape a little bit. Again, you can kind of just use your ear, see what sounds good. Clap everything. Take out the lows from everything, except from the bass. Bass, there's a couple notes that were just ringing out in a weird way, and you can kind of find those frequencies and take them down so the whole thing sounds a little bit better. So I did that in this case, and then the bass is supposed to be low, so I took out the highs from this one. But this one's unique. This is the bass. Everything else, besides the bass and the kick drum, we want to remove the lows. Kicks, see, we kept them. The way I typically EQ the kick is I'll take it down around 500 hertz and kind of move this around and feel it out, see where it sounds good. And then I'll boost the lows and the highs around that. I don't know, it's a little trick I learned back in the day that kind of makes the kick knock a little bit harder. Just really help emphasize it. And I don't do this every time, but you can kind of listen and see if it sounds good. And I thought it sounded good in this case. And that's a lot of what mixing is, just kind of playing around with certain things. You have some general guidelines and rules, for lack of a better word, that you can start with. And then other than that, it's just kind of using your ear beyond these basic guidelines to find out what sounds good and just kind of get everything to mix very well. The levels is a big part of it too. So you want to make sure that the levels of everything, how loud or soft everything is compared to each other, is okay. So the kick, usually have this coming in close to 0. You can look over here at this chart. Had it closer to 3 this time. But again, the kick's the one thing you can get close to this 0 where it's okay if it clips a little bit. Everything else, you don't really want that. With levels, I usually start with the drums and try to get the drums to sound good with each other. So make sure that these are all leveled out. EQ, again, removing the lows. Use a little bit of compression on the hi-hats. Especially with these rolls, it could get a little bit peaky. So I want to remove those peaks, keep everything under control. And a little trick for mixing drums, you can route all of these individual drum sounds to a bus. So route all these tracks to this channel, and then this is the channel that goes to the master. So if you can see where the lines go, these only go to the drum bus, and then it's the drum bus that goes to the master. And you can use Fruity Compressor to make parallel compression. So what I do there is I turn the attack up to about 30 milliseconds, turn the ratio all the way up, and then I play around with the threshold, make sure that it's getting compressed just a little bit. I'll gain match it, which with gain matching, it basically just means you want the same volume whether you have this turned on or off. So if you turn this plugin off, the drums should be the same volume as if you had it on. It's not entirely 100% mirror of each other, but it's pretty close. So you can use this gain button right here to help with that. This technique is called parallel compression, and once you've done all that, you turn this knob down mix level to 50%. So you get 50% of that signal coming through. And then with all these effects, you have all these in here too. Again, you really just want to play around with the volumes, make sure everything's quiet enough where it's not taking up too much space, kind of make sure that it's felt more than it's heard. And with these effects, a lot of the time while I'm doing the arranging, I'll double click on it and then set the volumes from here. And then you can fine tune it even more in here as well. You can see some of these I moved down a little bit. But yeah, even all these, just taking out the low ends, just anything that's not the kick or the bass, you want to remove the low end from. Ozone Imager. Use that on both of these on the melody. This is a super nice plugin that stereoizes everything, so it makes it sound wider. Instead of being centered, it'll spread it out in the stereo spectrum. What's nice about this plugin is, A, it's free. You can just Google Ozone Imager and download it for free. And second, it stereoizes and makes the sounds wider without causing a phasing issue. Sometimes if you just widen a track, it can cause phasing issues. So the frequencies from the right ear and the left ear can kind of cancel each other out, and it doesn't sound as good. So we don't want that. This plugin was specifically designed to avoid phasing issues, but still get that width, to still stereoize everything and make it wider. So this is a really good one. Again, it's free. I use it on quite a few things, and it really helps make the track fuller and wider and all that good stuff. Master, don't want to dive into that today. I admit I don't know a ton about mastering, but with FL Studio, you can kind of cheat a little bit and just use Maximus. This is a free plugin that just comes with FL Studio. It's got a bunch of presets, including de-esser, if I can find it. So if you're ever mixing vocals, you can add a de-esser or use this as a de-esser instead of having to download your own. And then they have all these masters that you can use too. So you can play around with these and find one that sounds good. You can just roll with one of the presets. And that's about it. I'll include a link to the full track if you want to hear this. I have this up on YouTube as well, just the track. And if you made it this far, thanks for watching.